Hi, everyone. Welcome back to this week's episode of the PETHS Alumni Network podcast. I'm your host, Nathan, and today we are joined by none other than Jonathan Wong. How are you doing?
Good, good. How are you doing?
I'm good. Thank you so much for your time. Full disclosure, we've meant to record this a while back, but we've had some busy schedules. So thank you so much, finding the time to join us today. So to give a bit of background info on you, you graduated from PET in 2019. We've had a few other 2019 grads who, like you, also went to Ivy Business School at Western University. So I'd love to hear, your experiences there, as we love Ivy on this podcast, obviously. So to start from the very beginning, what were some standout experiences in high school for you?
In high school, I remember high school being more of a stressful experience than it should have been. I mean, I think we kind of saw it, but with the inflation of marks, trying to compete with other people, especially like-minded people at PET, it was hard. I do remember going downstairs quite a few nights just to study, get through tests, and I think preparing more than some people just to compete with their marks. But man, I do remember it being stressful, and then eventually getting to university, having that weight off your shoulders. It was, I guess, an easier time, but it did prepare me, I guess, with correct practices, how to study for university, I guess, but it was I do remember it being slightly stressful. But I mean, there definitely are some good memories. I think specifically the teachers at PET were good. I think they were do cared a lot about their students, whether it was in different clubs, letting you start things that you're interested, talking to you about, things that you wanted to do and just about life. I think that's specifically what I guess kept me in check while in
Yeah.
school, other than a lot of the just focusing on grades, as well as some of the social aspects that we try to focus on too.
Yeah, I think I've heard that a lot on this podcast. The teachers, the leadership, they really set the tone,
Hmm.
if you will. And I guess, like, were there any extracurricular activities? I think we mentioned offline that you did some case comps, some other stuff just to
Yeah.
up your leadership ability, your thinking ability. What were those extracurriculars?
There were so I did start this one club in if you're familiar with the idea of Humans of New York. It was a popular Facebook page at the time, and I did notice it was quite cool. People were able to share their stories with a picture, as well as a blurb of what they're going through, maybe some of their struggles, some of their highlights. So I thought it'd be cool to bring that to Pet. So I think we started Humans of Pet. Got what exactly we called it, Humans of Trudeau. And I started that with a friend, Toby, and then we got that going. I was in grade 11, going to grade 12. So I think I found joy in that. I mean, I am very into photography, so the idea of just capturing a picture, whether it was a headshot, whether it was something in action, a candid, and then asking them to share something they had in mind, I thought that was pretty inspiring. And it can kind of put a good perspective about what other people in Pet were going through. So, if they're going through hardships at school, or if they were sharing some highlights about what they did during the summer, it was cool to just check in with people. And we made this page and eventually a club. And then this is what I guess I kind of pivoted towards to writing about in university, and especially apps as well. And I'm not sure if it was exactly what schools were looking for, but I was more than happy to talk about what I had interest in, and I think um, it even came out better in apps just because it wasn't as rigorous or as um, technical as other people's apps talking about maybe Deca
Yeah.
or
Mhm.
other extracurriculars that seemed copy and pasted at the
Yeah.
time too.
Yeah, so I didn't know that you're the founder of that club, and it kind of like is almost like this page kind of seems like a continuation of that page in a way, just like longer form of like
Oh,
a full-on
absolutely.
podcast. I didn't
Yeah,
realize that at the
yeah.
time, but yeah, I guess you talked about the value of like understanding other people, where they're coming from, getting to know other people, sharing their stories. So I didn't know that there was this alignment here, and so that worked out perfectly. And you kind of alluded to Deca and uni apps, which are rigorous for business schools, right?
Yeah.
But like rewinding back a little bit, at what point did you decide that you were going to commit to business school?
Oh, I don't think I knew until like part of grade 12. I mean, I was joking around with a friend, Catherine, and I remember in grade 9, she put that or beginning of grade 9 science or whatever class, the teacher kind of handed out pamphlets and a little brochure. Tell me about yourself, what you want to do in the future. And so I was just sitting next to her. She wanted to do business. I'm like, I don't mind business. This could be cool. So I put it down as well, just because I had nothing to put. And then I went through high school, grade 9, grade 10 courses were pretty standard. Grade 11 is when I decided to keep my options open. So I wanted to take all the maths, all the sciences, and then I got to grade 11 and I realized I did not want to do any more science, but I liked math to a certain extent. So I kept physics, dropped chem, bio. I think grade 12 came around. I continued with the maths. I dropped physics. I realized I wasn't that great at physics either. And then it really kind of put me to one spot. I couldn't do CS. I wasn't too interested about anything else. So to keep it really general, um, and because my courses kind of pushed me towards that direction too, I did go into business. I mean, it definitely wasn't the most sought out thing since grade 9, but uh, I guess it was something that I had a small interest in, and so it's kind of what I wanted to do now, especially since I was never too picky about what courses I did, what I wanted to study. I mean, being in business kind of allows you for that opportunity to do really much whatever you want as well.
So it kind of sounds like you leaned on your friends a little bit, but also did some
Oh, for
self-exploration at
sure.
the same time. So I
Yeah.
think that's something we can take away, like kind of combining those two rather than like over relying on your friends or just, not talking to your friends at all. I think there's a happy medium somewhere there, right?
Yeah.
Um, and and
Good way of
offline,
putting
we,
it.
we mentioned that there was a pretty big cohort of 2019 grads from PET who ended up going to Ivy, right?
Hmm.
Was Ivy always your first choice? And like, how did you kind of prioritize different schools when you were
Yeah.
applying?
No, UBC was my first choice, but it was my first choice because we got the results out sooner. I think it comes out in February rather than all the other schools that might come out in March, April, even towards May. So I wanted to go to, I think it was UBC Souder. I was applying with a couple of my friends, and I just got waitlisted. I was heartbroken, and then I guess other apps came my way, so I specifically applied to U of T, Ryerson, um, where else? I guess Western, and then AFM as well at Waterloo. I wanted to keep my options open. Really did not know where I was going to go. I saw myself going to Waterloo or U of T, but yeah, I mean, I just didn't particularly know where I wanted to go during this time, but Ivy was not my first choice. Something I got into. I think he was one of the. I got an acceptance in May, and it was really competing between Waterloo and Ivy. Specifically for the co-op programs at Waterloo. I knew a couple of my friends were going to go there, and it seemed easier to get co-ops. Whether whatever opportunities were there, but. Uh, I just, I guess knowing about accounting, I just didn't want to be in that lifestyle, learning about all the taxes, audit that my friends are in. But I think I made the right choice. I think Ivy specifically is good at keeping a lot of things general. I mean, when you do your two first years, I did BMOS, so didn't really matter. And then you graduate with an arts degree. It's a business arts degree. So I mean, I didn't even specialize in anything. I chose the courses that I like the most, and I think that's what has really worked out for me too.
So before you kind of mentioned in high school, you're kind of keeping it general. You took science classes up until some older grades. Did you ever kind of consider maybe like enrolling at Western in something else your first 2 years and then going to Ivy, or did you just always want to do BMOS?
I definitely thought about it. I didn't realize there was a dual degree probably until after I accepted. Um, And so I was looking towards some silly things like crim or even econ at some points. I thought it'd just be more worth it for my money to get it or to get a dual degree uh, until I realized I just wasn't particularly qualified or didn't have the prereqs in a lot of other courses or to choose other programs. So I did think about it, but at the same time, doing an extra year of schooling just didn't appeal to me either. I
Mhm.
did really want to kind of get in and out. But now that I'm out, I kind of do want to go back in.
Right.
But yeah,
Yeah, and I guess you mentioned with Waterloo, like yes, they have the co-op program, but at the same time, it's a trade-off because I think you have to take an extra year, right? Because you do
yeah,
extra terms, right? So it's always like a trade-off, right? And offline, we were talking a lot about, the benefits of going to Ivy, and you said you made the right choice, and I feel like I made the right choice too. So we both love Ivy, in that sense. What are some of the other, skills that, you're really thankful that were taught at Ivy?
yeah. And I think I did mention this before, but it's the communication and some of the soft skills that you're taught. Specifically, I guess working in teams. Like man, those 48s really like push you to be collaborative. Um, and there's only so much those peer reviews can do at the end, giving them low marks. You kind of like you have no choice but to push through them. So first off, I mean, people probably say this a lot, but having the ability to speak and getting your point across clearly without BS is, I think,
Yeah.
pretty important. Uh, I definitely hear a lot of people at work mumble on,
Mm,
say things that they don't need to be said, and
mm,
just talk for hours
yeah,
across meetings that could have been said in maybe an email, maybe
yeah,
in like half the time.
mm,
So I think I for sure have learned to appreciate that, as well as I think the second quality is just
mm,
teamwork. Man, yeah,
mm,
the 48s were tough. I think
yeah,
I I definitely got unlucky in my first 48 working with people just not very
mm,
like-minded, and
mhm,
I think I stayed up for with our finance 48, like the
mhm,
full 48 hours and then staying up for the rest of the day. Like that
mm,
was brutal. I mean, there's only
yeah,
really so much you could do and ask for from a
mhm,
team.
yeah,
But like, not to make this sound like an interview, but like it really came down to man, what are you good at? Like
mhm, yeah,
how can I make sure
mhm,
you want to do what
yeah,
you are capable of doing, not in a rude way, but like man, we need to get this done. Like if you want to work on this, I could like try to work on something else if you're not
mhm.
comfortable with it. So like those two specifically, I think were some of the most important ones and applicable to work as well.
Right. Yeah, I think that teamwork skill, they kind of just throw you in with a bunch of people that you don't know super well, especially like in
Yeah.
the first semester, you don't know them super well. And you kind of alluded to like the section that you're in, right? Because you're in a section of 78 people. And then
Hmm.
from that 78 people, you're thrown into a room with five other people for this 48-hour report, right? And I've heard, crazy things coming out of different sections. Each section has their own culture.
Yeah.
What was your kind of section culture like?
Um, ooh, thinking about it, I think my their culture was pretty chill.
Yeah.
There weren't major I guess dramas or I guess things that have come out from the section. Uh, we were I guess online, kind of online for that first year when I was in third year. I think it was 2020, so getting into 2020, 2022, I think it
Mhm.
was.
Yeah.
And it was just hard to also be in person with them all the time.
Right.
I mean, we even had the sick day policy. So if you were sick,
Mm,
like you just send in that form and you don't have to go to class. They had the
yeah.
online option. But for the most part, it's about going out with the section, getting to know them. Like there was no conflict. I don't think there is much conflict within sections, especially at Ivy anyways.
Yeah.
I mean, it was chill. I mean, I have no complaints about it.
Yeah. So you did an exchange there in Switzerland, right? And that's kind of like a very stark contrast from what you just mentioned of being online, just being like a box on a screen to like going to
Hmm.
like a different continent to study, right? Was that kind of something that you looked at this whole time you were going to Ivy? Like, is it something you're like, okay, I'm going to do it as soon as I get there, or was it kind of something that like kind of just fell into place at the right time?
It really fell into place. I mean, kind of
Mm,
like my friends
yeah.
that applied to Ivy, a lot of them said that they were going to try to do exchange as well.
Mhm.
So, I mean, I didn't mind at least applying for exchange. So the way that I guess you're familiar with it too, but the works is
Mhm.
you apply when you're in third year, and
Mhm.
then you get I guess your school of choice in your fourth year. Then you could try to change it around. You could try to I guess pull out if you really
Yeah.
want to. So St. Gallen or Switzerland was not my first choice. I think I put two schools in London and then Manchester and then Singapore and then St. Gallen was my fifth or sixth choice,
Mhm.
as well as with the other Ivy students as well.
Yeah.
They didn't specifically choose St. Gallen,
Yeah.
but it was I would say you're right. It is different from what I was really had the intention of going for. I think my picture of going on exchange was to have fun with friends and
Mm.
travel, not to be sent out to Switzerland alone with my friends thousands of kilometers apart, and not really I guess having the final send off I wanted to in my fourth year. But I will say it was definitely a learning opportunity as I guess fun as it was being away. It definitely taught me a lot about myself, I guess how I like to travel, what I think or specifically how I think in stressful situations
Mm.
across the world, and it was different. So I definitely would recommend
Yeah.
exchange, but like it's not exactly what I sought out to do going into Ivy and even into third year.
So a lot of what I feel like when I think back to my Ivy experience is they kind of just like throw you into the deep end. Like
Yeah,
I think I had Bippy on the podcast, right?
yeah,
And she mentioned this idea of like trial by fire. And what she kind of meant by that was like, for example, like with the cases, right? You're first exposed to it in second year, 2257, right? And the first time you do a case,
yeah.
sometimes you just have absolutely no idea like how to do it because they haven't really like taught you that framework. But
Hmm.
you read it. Well, in third year you read it, but in fourth year, you know, you're off doing senioritis, doing senior
Yeah,
things, right? So in third
exactly.
year, when you're actually supposed to read the case, you know, you kind of read it and you're like, I have no idea what to do. So you're kind of like thrown into the deep end that way. And then
Hmm.
same with like you mentioned the 48-hour reports, same with your exchange, things like that. Do you think like it was a healthy amount of you know throwing you into the fire? Like, do you think that's a valuable experience that everyone should have?
Yeah, no, it's a good way to put it.
Yeah,
I think you put it nicely,
yeah,
being thrown into a fire. Uh, I think that I guess it does depend on the person. Um, I mean, I think of myself as pretty easygoing. I am down for really whatever. So the idea of, exchange coming up, about different groups, it doesn't really phase me until it actually happens. And so I do remember I was um I think alone in my alone in my room in London, and I was trying to figure out this visa situation for St. Gallen. So I had to send my passport to the embassy in Ottawa, and then I had to wait to get it back. But I was going on a family trip, and I needed my passport for that too. And I was really just thinking like, well, do I really want to go? Like, I think that was the first
yeah,
moment where I stopped to think, not about like what my friends are doing or about what I thought I wanted to do, just really just like what do I want to do now? Is this a good opportunity for me? Should I just stay here, stay with my friends as well? But I think there is a fine line about being comfortable and then putting yourself in uncomfortable situations, or I guess being thrown into the fire. And with that, a lot of people, I think they go into understanding where they don't necessarily think, and then they think before it's too late. But I think I don't know, it just kind of came to me where I was interested in this and I didn't think too much about it up until I was actually sending my passport out. And at that point, to be honest, it was too late. Like I
yeah,
couldn't go back on it.
yeah,
So I kind of a lot of with my life, it kind of has come to me in ways that I'm not ready for. But I think it, being I guess with surrounding yourself with a good friend group as well as like just trusting in yourself and having the competent abilities, it definitely builds you up. I definitely would say I learned a lot of skills, especially just traveling as well, like how to navigate airports or what to even look for when going to a new country. But it definitely was I, yeah, I don't know. I
yeah,
say a fine line when I think
mhm,
about it, but if it's something I'd do now, like maybe not since I'm so comfortable at home,
yeah.
but it was a good
Yeah.
opportunity back then coming out from university.
Yeah, I think those moments where you kind of like stop and ask yourself, wait, why am I doing this? I think like those are really important, just like as a sanity check. But also it just makes like those moments when you're actually, you know, for example, in Switzerland, it makes it feel much better, right? Because like
Hmm.
you had so much self-doubt or you're questioning yourself at that time, to finally like be, you know, in the moment. I think it just makes it that much sweeter, right? So you know, switching gears a little bit, we talked offline a little bit. You know, we both feel like Ivy kind of gives you a really good footing into multiple different like functions, right? So you started off in supply chain
Yeah.
and logistics. You then went on to like IT consulting, and now you're at Mace doing project advisory with the Metrolinx Go expansion, right? So those are all very different kind of
Mm-hmm.
industries and functions. But like, starting off at Labatt in your internship, what were some of the highlights of that internship, and what was the biggest learning point, I guess, from that internship?
Oh, biggest learning point. I mean, I went into Labatt with a lot of expectation. I kind of went in my first week and I was like, oh, this is probably where I want to spend a couple of years or even like part of my life working. I really like the culture. I like the free beer and perks. They had a like a tap in the restaurant, no, in the office. So it was just cool to get beer, and I did really like it. I mean, but I think one thing I learned from that is set or don't get your hopes too high. I mean,
Mhm,
set realistic expectations about work. I mean, coming in as an intern, I really thought just the world was mine. Like it's so easy to do whatever. But then obviously, my time at Labatt was just cut short without any full-time opportunities being available in the I guess logistics and supply chain operations. And I think that's my biggest takeaway as I had so much I guess hope and so much aspiration for it. I didn't really have the or didn't want to focus on other things. But if if it was really as easy as thinking this might not where I want to be or to have backup opportunities to even start looking for what I wanted to do early on could have pushed me into maybe a better direction, at least a least stressful position coming into fourth year.
mhm,
And I think I just kind of put all my eggs in the bucket, and before I had a moment to think it was slightly too late for that.
mhm. Right. I think that's kind of like the good thing about, trying different jobs, right? Like, I guess like we all had kind of have that, first like new shiny job, and we're like, oh, I'm
Hmm.
going to do this for the rest of my life. But as you mentioned offline, you've had two other consulting jobs, right? So at what point did you kind of decide that you're going to switch from supply chain to consulting?
Yeah. I think one of the things was I guess first I didn't go back to Labatt for consulting for supply chains, and the other one was just uh the the opportunities that was available for supply chains. A lot of it was in the distribution centers. It was in
Yeah.
Saga, Etobicoke, and
Mhm,
commuting from Markham to Etobicoke,
mhm,
it's not the friendliest drive.
yeah.
I think it took 2 hours on the way back and an hour and
Mhm,
a half in the morning. So I think a lot of it was just based off of comfort, what I wanted to do,
mhm,
what I was comfortable doing. So location kind of built the factor, as well as I think I was still interested in operations because it kind of balances the fine line of strategic reasoning and then math as well or some financial or data
mhm,
aspects of it. So I thought that was cool. I mean, even in when I was applying to internships, there was I guess open for Deloitte's supply chain, but that I guess just did not go through, and I was kind of bummed about that. So
mhm,
it was really whatever best thing was next. But because I was prepping so much for consulting, it was so much easier just to kind of fall somewhere else into another consulting position, kind of being a generalist in the area.
mhm. So, there's kind of two kind of trains of thoughts, right? Which we mentioned. There's like going to like the big four, for example,
Hmm.
or like an MBB, so like bigger consulting firms. And like you mentioned, they kind of touch all areas. They're more general a lot
Yeah.
of the time. And then there's like going into very specific kind of consulting. Like I mentioned, you've been in IT consulting, you've been in project advisory, right? Um,
Hmm.
so you mentioned offline that you applied to a lot of these big four, right?
Hmm.
What was kind of the rationale between choosing between these two different paths?
Yeah, that's a good point. And eventually, one way, or I think I mentioned this before, but afterwards, after applying, an offer did come my way from one of the big four, and it was literally just for a consulting position. And this is everything I hoped for at the moment. I was pretty excited to see the offer. Um, but after doing a lot of the coffee chats, a lot of the networking, talking to my friends at these big four, and I just didn't want to kind of be stuck there for 1 or 2 years. really just I guess to their point, working on decks,
Mhm.
um, being late in the office, and really having not much of an impact on the final work. I mean, I did understand it was going to take a while to build my kind of climb the ladder within the
Mhm.
Big Four to even have an impact to talk more freely with the clients. So I I didn't want to spend so much time just kicking rocks and being like in that environment. So it did kind of push me towards smaller operations and businesses where I knew maybe some of my um I guess work could have an impact immediately, which is kind of why I kind of chose so late and kind of fell into Canadian Banknote. I
Mhm.
mean, as cool as a company it was, um, and how soon they put me out there with the clients, I think I did learn to kind of see my work kind of put in use, whether it
Mhm.
was some of the forecasting stuff I did, making sure that they understood what the final line was and how they were able to use some of my numbers and data
Right.
into their own operations. So even, for example, we went to the client site in Edmonton and we're giving them a forecast about how many driver's license they might be looking at for the next fiscal year. So it was 2024, seeing if this estimate kind of what they had in plan, the budget for it. And I think that was cool to see my numbers being presented to a pretty high up, I guess, worker within Edmonton or within the province of Alberta was quite cool to see, and which I might not have been able to do at some of the bigger companies,
Mhm.
and did kind of push me to where I am now as well. Um, Even though I'm still not even sure what I want to do, continue with consulting, kind of be in this project advisory, project management. At least at Mace, kind of where I find myself now, I do really like the work that I'm doing.
Mhm.
Um, Even though it's not as clear cut as some other positions. I mean, it's definitely taking a chance with a smaller organization,
Mhm.
or smaller org in Toronto. I
Mhm.
mean, it definitely did not sit well with me knowing where my future was going to hold. But being involved in Metrolinx, where I am able to see my work, my numbers come through, especially on such a big program that means so much to me as well. I think it was definitely a cool opportunity I had to take.
Right. I think sometimes in business school you're kind of like, oh, I need to go work at a big four consulting firm, right? I think a lot of business kids like have that idea, or there's kind of that pressure, right?
Yeah.
To be at a prestigious job. And that's not to say that, Mace isn't prestigious, right? Like you mentioned that they've built the Tottenham Stadium. You said that they built a lot of the infrastructure for the London Olympics in
That's right. Yeah.
2012, right? So, and they're doing a huge project right here in Toronto with the Go expansion, right? So that's not to say that they're not prestigious, but I think we have these kind of preconceived notions, like you mentioned, about
Yeah.
what we should be doing or how other people are going to view us, right, by doing these things. And I want to ask, consulting are known for its very rigorous interview processes,
Hmm.
right? There's a lot of preparation you have to do. What's your kind of advice for how you would tackle it if you were to do it again?
Oh, I think one thing is start early. Um, for me, I started specifically 2 weeks before I had my interview, and definitely was not enough time. I mean, why put yourself in such a stressful situation when it could be easier? I mean, for consulting prep, it is very generalized. There is a process and rigorous process or standard process that you go through, the case interviews, prepping for them, some behavioral questions, having those unlock just early on is a lot easier, especially now that I'm seeing a lot of other companies start pivoting towards case methods and case interviews. I guess not as specific as consulting, but even having the skills in your back pockets, like it's not a bad skill to kind of pick up.
Hmm. Yeah, so you mentioned starting early, right? I think that really applies to just about anything, really, right? Like whether it be like university apps,
True.
your Ivy apps in year two, whenever you have to
Yeah.
hand those in. A lot of these things, right? We have to start early, be prepared for those, right? So when I think of, kind of you mentioned you worked with the province of Alberta. Right now you're working with like Metrolinx, which is like kind of like a crown corporation, right?
Yeah.
Um, when I kind of think of that, like it seems very like bureaucratic, kind of like, and we know that like living in Toronto, right, these projects take a long time, right? Like that's just
Yeah.
like that's the first thing I think of, right? How
Mm.
is it kind of working with public sector, teams?
Good question.
Yeah.
Oh man, you're right. They
Yeah.
definitely are very bureaucratic. For example, during the winter break from December or from Christmas all the way up to New Year's, they have that off. They don't
Mhm.
work. Um, but I think what's different is about working for for-profit organizations like the Canadian Banknote, like Mace, is that our work doesn't stop just because the client's on break or the client's on hold. We're always kind of pushing towards different improvements, different projects within Metrolinx, within the company behind the or behind whatever the client sees. So
Mhm.
for example, one of our KPIs is centered around one project we're doing on the team, but we have seven other projects that we have to balance and kind of look at, even though it's not being tied in into our bonus and into our final
Mhm.
KPI, it's still work that the client likes to see. And I think what's important for Mace is we're we're consultants at the end of the day. We're not employed by Metrolinx. So, going above and beyond, doing the extra work for the client, making sure that, they are looked after, that they
Mhm.
do have the, I guess, correct skills, procedures in
Uh-huh.
place so that they can continue to upskill the work when we're gone, I think is
Mhm.
important. It's also important, I think it could have clarified that within Metrolinx, we work on embedded teams. So I think to Metrolinx point of view, they don't know who is coming from a joint venture. They don't know who's coming from Mace. We do really
Right.
just work on one big team. I mean, it does become more clear as time goes on and the resources we have available to us. But it's also one of the reasons I've kind of fallen into place so much at Metrolinx or at Mace.
Mhm.
And I kind of do did forget about the I guess work I was
Mhm.
doing and more so interested in the
Mhm.
work that kind of they do produce.
So you mentioned like teamwork, right? And that kind of draws back to what you mentioned about, the 48-hour reports. It's something that, you've noticed carries over from school into
Hmm
real life, right? What have been some other of your like biggest lessons learned or things you've taken away from your time at Mace?
Uh Man, I think I keep coming around to this, but I think this actually does speak to what I'm doing now and why. I think it's if you're not if you don't really love the work that you're doing, for example, if you're really into um you're really knees deep into doing some data work and you're not the biggest fan, if your work, you don't always see shine through, at least work for a project or at least work for a company that that means a lot to you and does
Mhm.
have meaningful work. I think that's what has got me through a lot of the kind of the work that I'm doing here. For example, I work on a lot of upskilling project managers, making sure that people at Metrolinx have the right skills into uh, being on site, whether it's things like schedule management, risk management, and making sure they have the right skills. So at one point, I was looking at their data and producing hundreds of tables for different project managers, and just different directors as well. And it was kind of hard to see like why am I doing this? Like they could get really anyone out of school to do this. Like I should leave. I should do something else. Work at a do work that I might really want to do more than kind of just producing tables in Excel and working through different models. But I think at the end of the day, it what kept me grounded and rooted was this work is important in the grand scheme of things, building the foundations of Metrolinx and upskilling the program so that, in 20 years we could really experience the GO trains as well as people in Markham, people in the GTA that are able to see the fruits of the labor down the road. I mean, just the idea that my work is going to have an impact or bigger impact on the community
Mhm.
it definitely makes me stay and makes me want to keep working on the project. Otherwise, if he was really just for profit, and just towards other companies, and I couldn't see the fruits of
Yeah.
my labor, it
Yeah.
definitely would be a lot more demotivating and just not as clear of a picture when you kind of come home at the end of the day.
Right. Yeah, I think that's something that we all kind of strive for. But I've heard kind of stories like, for example, if you're in like investment banking and you're like, financing a wind farm in like India, right? Like
Yeah.
it's difficult to see your work come to fruition, like you mentioned, right?
Mm-hmm.
you don't have as much of an emotional connection to it, right? So yeah, I think that I think that's really great advice because I think we get lost so much in like the dollar signs and the prestige of it, right? We kind of lose track of why we really started in the first place, and not everyone gets to that level of finding their purpose, right? So I think that's
Yeah.
something we can all strive for. And along those same lines, as we wrap up, right? What are some of the things that you're kind of looking at as goals in the future, things you strive for? I think you mentioned before that you would consider going back to school, maybe.
Mm-hmm.
Like, are there any school plans, vacation plans, work plans, volunteering plans, anything like that?
Coming up soon. Oof. I do have, I guess, some vacation plans, but
Mhm.
it's kind of far away. It's in September. But one thing that I guess I have been working through and can speak on is I tore my ACL back in
Mhm.
February last year, and I got surgery for it in November, and
Mhm.
it's definitely been a long journey to get the rehab I need to get back in the gym. So at one point earlier this year, I was in the gym 3, 4 days a week just trying to get the strength back in my knee. So with the summer coming up, I definitely don't want to waste away the summer. It is a bit early to come back. I think now in May, I'm 6 months from surgery.
Mhm.
So I think they want you to wait 9 months. My surgeon's telling me to wait until September. But
Mhm.
one thing I'm really working on, especially with my PT, is trying to get the strength back in coordination, um, and then strengthening other parts of the knee so
Mhm.
that I could get back to sports a bit sooner. I'm
Mhm.
hoping for a mid-June, early July return to sports like frisbee, soccer, and badminton specifically. But that's one of the goals I have. I mean, it does kind of interfere with
Mhm.
work and kind of other
Mhm.
ambitions I've had. But
Mhm.
like this has been kind of on my mind. I even
Mhm.
have a few songs listed to want to
Mhm.
get back into sports just to
Nice.
play. So it's
Yeah.
quite funny and it
Mhm.
yeah,
Mhm.
it would be cool to get back out.
Yeah, we'll be cheering for you. I know you mentioned you broke your rib earlier, so we're hoping for you to make a full recovery. And some of the tones of this podcast have been a lot about health, right? They say health is wealth.
Hmm.
Especially some of the alumni who have been out of school for a few years.
Hmm.
I tend to notice they have a lot different perspective as students who are trying to find their first job.
Yeah, for
Right,
sure.
they have a little bit of a different perspective. And my final question for you, if you could nominate another pet alum or any number of pet alum to be on the podcast, who would it be?
Um, I, I think if you haven't already, I think you know him, Alex Leung.
Mm-hmm.
He's been a close friend for past couple of years, and I think the journey he's taken to get where he is now, being at vet school finally, it means a lot to him, and I think he made that very clear to us too. I
Mm-hmm.
mean, he brings it up probably every month we
Yeah,
see him.
yeah.
Um, so I think he definitely has a different perspective, especially being in STEM and then finally getting to where he is after years and years of trying. I
Mm-hmm.
think that'd be probably something cool to listen to.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, he was a great teammate, co-captain of the volleyball team. So,
Yeah,
he deserves, everything he's worked for. He was great at ultimate frisbee. Did that. He was the ultimate frisbee guy on our team.
yeah.
Yeah, great memories at offset, things like that. And oh, sorry, one final question. If you could give your like 17-year-old, 18-year-old self any kind of advice, knowing what you know now, what would it be?
Oof. Uh, oh man, like with the type of questions, there's always two schools of thoughts.
Yeah.
It's one where it's like just enjoy your time
Hmm.
and relax, but then knowing that I probably would not be where I am here, and
Hmm.
the other one would just be to put your head down and kind of work a bit harder so you're not
Hmm.
as stressed in
Yeah.
different situations of your life.
Yeah.
Um, but I guess one thing of advice I'd probably tell myself is I mean, it is hard. I mean, I don't know if I would have received it back then, but to not let things get so personal. I
Mhm.
mean, with friends, with school, with a lot of things, hardships thrown in your life that I guess any university student would see. It's definitely easy to get distracted, think of yourself as you're not as good,
Mhm.
you're like how your friends might perceive you, and it definitely take it a lot more to heart than I guess some other people would be if they weren't in that situation. And I think
Mhm.
that's one thing I do wish I kind of kept in mind is that not everything is so serious. I mean,
Mhm.
if it doesn't impact, if you don't see it impacting you in like 5, 10 years, relax.
Yeah.
Don't stress out too much about it. So I think like not being maybe so sensitive to things and being a little more I guess looking at the big picture definitely
Right.
does help, but like you can't say that to a 17-year-old
Yeah.
when they're
Yeah.
applying to university.
Yeah.
Like that's hard to say. But
Mhm.
if I did understand that back then,
Yeah.
I think that's one thing I
Yeah.
think would be important
Mhm.
for me to know.
Yeah, that's awesome advice. I think anyone can really apply that to, anything that's going on in their life. And like you mentioned, like maybe like, even if you don't get offered back, your internship to go full time, right? There's like
Hmm.
something else that, you can pivot to and find your passion in something else, right? Um, I guess like you kind of mentioned, you put all your eggs in one basket with your internship, but you were able to pivot and find something else to do, right?
Yeah,
So I guess, right, keeping that attitude, like level, not letting it be the end of the world, even though it feels like it at the time, right? Not taking
yeah,
it so personally, not so serious. And you were able to, find something else that you really enjoy doing afterwards, right? So yeah, thank you for, all your insights today about, like I just mentioned, you mentioned just being thrown into the fire, right? At Ivy, the
hmm
idea of teamwork, communication, and I guess just being open to whatever comes at you. The idea of not putting all your eggs in one basket, finding something where you can see the fruits of your labor, right? I think that's something
absolutely.
we all strive for. So thank you so much for your time. Thank you everyone so much for watching, and we'll see everyone next week. Peace out.